That's a that's a great question. Great question.
This was a great chat. I really appreciate the thoughtful questions. So
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today, man. I appreciate it.
hey, thanks for having me. I love talking about this movie, so I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited to talk about it with you as well. It's so funny and it's so charming. I really enjoyed it. But I do also want to take the opportunity to say I think you were fantastic in Saturday Night as well, man. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. And Michael had me cackling, and he got some great reactions in our screening. So it's the year of Tommy at the moment, man.
Listen, I had a good month of October. I'm not going to complain. And talk about two very different roles and experiences, both of them great. But thank you for the kind words.
Oh, no, my pleasure. But like I said, I'm excited to talk about your monster as well, man. And I'd love to sort of start off with, I guess, a question about one of my favorite scenes in the film. And it's when Monster and Laura are sitting there watching, I believe it was Night of the Living Dead. That was the movie
Yeah.
you guys were watching on there. And I loved Monster's reactions about that's not how you would do that. Like, this is how I would do it in this way. And it kind of made me curious because I'm a big horror fan and I love seeing different people's reactions to horror in general. I'm very much a person who goes, I would rather people make stupid decisions in horror films because it leads to the fun horror stuff. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know what your reactions to horror are like. What sort of horror film watcher are you? Are you like Monster where you're criticizing it, or do you like when things kind of go crazy in those sorts of movies?
That's a that's a great question. I'm not like a biggest horror fan, which is one reason this was so fun to do this movie and work with Melissa, who is a modern scream queen. So this,
Mm.
in many ways, this has been kind of a gateway experience for me. I'm a fan of the dark, deeply psychological stuff. I mean, I go to Babadook, which is an
Oh,
Australian film,
it
right?
is. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, talk about something that's just lived under my skin since I saw that. That's kind
100%.
of my gear. I can laugh at the bigger, crazier stuff. Maybe that makes me a sicko, but I find that stuff funny and amusing. But the stuff that really haunts me is more of the psychological stuff.
And this, I mean, the last 10 years has been some of the best we've seen in that genre for sure. Babadook is
Yeah.
a brilliant example of that. I also love the introduction to Monster in this film, and the most casual delivery of what's up really sets the tone of like what we're going to see in this film. So I'm curious to know what your reaction was to not just that line in the script, but sort of the introduction to Monster and how Caroline sort of put the tone forward. And then how did that evolve as you read the script? What was your sort of initial takeaways, initial reaction for seeing Monster for the first time?
Yeah, well, Caroline, I did there's a short film of this
Mm.
concept that I did with Caroline, and so our conversations about this character go back a long way. We met on a show called Casual that in the States was on Hulu. It was a TV show I did for a few years, and
Mm.
it's really there was a lot of low key subtlety and snarkiness in that show and in my character in particular. And she had spent a day, Caroline was an actor, was actually guest starring on that show. And she spent a couple days watching me. Then, I mean, talk about a very LA thing. She
Mm.
then ran into me at a yoga class, like maybe a year later and said, "Hey, I'm putting together this monster thing." First of all, I was psyched from the get-go because no one's ever asked me to put on the prosthetics or play a monster or anything. So I'm like,
Sure.
I'll just show up for 3 days just for the fun of that. And and I said, but then what kind of, big monster with a capital M stuff do you want me doing? And she said, no, just the mask is going to do the work. You just do you. And I was like,
Awesome.
really? You want monster to be that kind of I don't know, snarky and grumpy and subversive and funny. And she said, that's exactly what I want. She's just got such I don't know the words for it, but like she's got such a sense of what genres are going to blend well
Yeah.
together. And I think she thought my sense of humor and with a monster mask was the cocktail she wanted. And thank God I trusted her because I'm so happy with the results.
Oh, the genre mashing of this film is incredible, and it's not an easy line to balance. I can imagine from its screenplay to it directing that whole journey of it. I can imagine how difficult it would have been, but she pulls it off. So,
Yeah.
I love that you brought up the idea of the makeup and the prosthetics because I'm curious to know, obviously, if you had a great experience doing it. But so, how conscious are you of having to do facial expressions, or whether you have to heighten those sorts of things, the way you move your face and those under that makeup. What was that process like of sort of knowing when you had nailed those mannerisms with the prosthetics on?
Great question. The prosthetics that Dave Anderson uses, Dave's got a couple of Oscars. Dave does Eddie Murphy's work. So again, I knew I was in good hands. And they did all the 3D mapping. Every bit of that mask it matches up to the lines on my forehead, my crow's feet, everything. So any kind
Wow.
of movement I do, that mask will do. And so again, it was a matter of trust.
Yeah.
I messed around in the mirror for a little bit and recognized very quickly that whatever I did played, which was such a gift to the movie because there's plenty of big moments, as you know, but also there's I like to play small sometimes, and that subtle
Yeah.
stuff, that emotional stuff, I think comes through, and that was a concern early, but again, it quickly dissolved once I realized how good this mask was. The only thing I would say, I didn't consciously make bigger expression,
Right.
but at the end of the week, it kind of hit me on Friday when they took my, when I knew I was heading into the weekend.
Mm.
Um, you kind of feel like you've been lifting weights every day with your face. There's like a
Right.
facial fatigue that happens with it. And I'd be on the
Interesting.
go all week long, just adrenaline pumping, and wouldn't recognize it. But when we'd go out for beers on Friday night, I'd be like, my face is damn tired.
It's doing the literal heavy lifting after
Yeah,
with all that
right.
makeup on it. And obviously the makeup in a physical sense shows a monster, and that's the premise of the film, and it explores themes of identity and being comfortable in your own skin. So I'm curious to know, outside of what the makeup may have made you feel like physically, what did it actually teach you more about humanity and being comfortable in your own skin, and definitely even as a performer, having to sort of release inhibitions and be comfortable with not always being yourself. What did having that mask on sort of teach you or show you about that?
Oh man, we're going deep. I love it. I love it. Well, Melissa would tell you that once I got in all the monster gear and the wig came on and I put on that dirty monster outfit, that I started to really feel myself. That my chest would really. I didn't notice I was doing this,
Well,
but
yeah,
she was
yeah.
like, she has, I think, rightfully pointed out that I started to strut a little bit and. Like I stood a little bit taller, so it did something to me very positive.
Yeah.
But I think the other big piece of it was, and uh, just on the level of performance, you leave your vanity at home. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look like Monster does, you don't need to be checking yourself in the mirror. You look like hell, and so you can just play the moments of each scene in a way that's harder to do, frankly, when you show up on set and bring your own feelings about what you look like to work. So that was very cool and very freeing. And then I had some interesting experience. We shot. There's some exterior scenes when we were out. There's a scene in a park that you might remember where we have
Yes.
it's a really big emotional scene.
Mm.
So the Super Bowl, which obviously huge in America,
Yeah.
had just finished. So people were pouring out of bars and walking by and we're wondering what Melissa Barrera, their favorite, horror actress, is doing with this gnarly looking dude wearing a suit walking through a park. So like the whole thing was a trip. But
Yeah.
I yeah, I want to say this, which is like it's so the one of the reasons I really wanted to do this is because it's such a personal story for Caroline, and
Right.
for her it was a story about falling in love with her own rage, coming out of a very personal, very trying experience,
Yeah.
and um, that concept. I'm so far from the question you asked now, but
No, no, no. This is good.
I do want to note that, like, when you can hitch your wagon to such a talented person telling such a personal story, you do it,
Yeah.
and I think the results speak for themselves.
No, no, I agree, and I think it leads perfectly into my next question because, obviously, as you can tell, I'm a big movie fan, and I love for me, fiction and film has played such a pivotal role in my life of understanding emotions or understanding events that have happened in my life that I may have not had a grasp on from a very like cathartic emotional level.
Yeah,
So I'm
me
curious
too.
to know, and especially in a film like this that is so heavily about identity and finding yourself in that rage and those feelings. What role has fiction played in your life to either help you understand things about yourself or moments in your life that you may have not had a grasp on? Has movies and stories played a role in your life in that way?
Yeah, it's the is it Roger Ebert that called the cinema an empathy
He
machine?
did, yes. Yeah.
So it's the, I love the transporting to different worlds, but I also I don't know. I grew up in the American South where we kind of have a stiff upper lip and it's kind of, suck it up and get on with it. And there's value in that. But I I really think watching movies and sort of living vicariously through them and through the characters within them allowed me to everything from grief to that kind of joy that brings tears. I mean, I would go
Yeah.
to the movies to have those emotional experiences. And
Yeah.
I see you nodding. My guess is that you've had the same
I'm the
experience.
same.
And
Yeah.
so does everyone. Even the most repressed person, can be caught crying in a movie theater. And I mean, I'm really nerding out now, but I really believe in movies in that way. And I
Yeah.
and I and I and in this one, I think I just love a good romance. The
Absolutely.
romance at the center of this one, I think. I don't know. Well, we could all use the occasional reminder of what love can be, right? Like it was
Yeah.
such a delight to take that ride.
No, God, absolutely. And I think cinema, to nerd out with you, is one of the most transported ways to do that. Like to see yourself reflected or a part of your an emotion of you reflected on the screen and to feel that connection. I think really it comes through other forms of art, but I think movies for me is the strongest way that I've ever felt
Yeah,
that. And you're right. I think the romance at the center of this is just so charming is the word you could describe it, but there you can't describe the feeling of charm that it gives you inside as well, which
yeah,
is quite
yeah.
sweet. So, Tommy, I'll wrap up on this, and you mentioned casual earlier, and sort of your work in TV, and I'm always curious to talk to people who've done extended stints on television and had a chance to flesh out characters over, say, like 40 episodes, as opposed to a 90-minute, 2-hour movie. So I'm curious to know, was there an element, or is there an element of the character of Monster you would love to have seen fleshed out over the course of multiple episodes, something you would have loved to explore about him over a longer period of time that a movie doesn't really get to do?
Oh man, these questions are so good. I mean,
Thank you.
I love doing this movie so much. I mean, we had, by the way, we shot this movie in 21 days. So I
Oh my
mean,
God.
it was run and gun.
Yeah.
Um, and I 100% would love to live in Monster's skin a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to spoil anything.
Sure.
Monster's world is. I'll put it this way: Monster's world is Laura in this movie, right?
Yes,
Laura,
definitely.
he is almost exclusively with Laura. Most of his scenes are in that house. I would love all else aside, would love to see Monster out in the world a little bit more, interacting with other people. How about that? That's
We
that's
could we
something that TV could give us for
That's I was like
Monster.
a week by week sort of serial adventure of Monster in different cities of America would be hilarious.
Right. Just see how he comes up against different types of people and how he deals with them or not.
Hey, I mean, I'm sure if whoever's watching this interview from the studio might be writing some notes down now, and who knows, you'll be getting a call later this week about that. Just don't forget me. As long as I
Fantastic.
get some sort of producer credit, that's all right. We'll take that.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've recorded this, so
That's
it's
it. Legally binding now, right?
that's right.
Tommy, dude, I really appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, this is such a sweet movie. Thank you so much for breaking it down with me, as well as a fellow movie nerd who feels all the feels when I'm watching films. Like this is one that definitely transports you to that. So thank you so much for taking the time, man. I appreciate it. I hope we get to do it
Oh
again
man.
sometime soon.
Yeah, hit me up whenever. This was a great chat. I really appreciate the thoughtful questions. So
Oh, well, I appreciate you, man. So thank you so much for that. Take it easy. We'll talk to you soon.
all right, bye
Thanks.
bye.